This week they put up another 48 or so, and they still gave up 40. But that's the Detroit Lions. But it's the way they did it. They jumped on the Lions. They stayed on top of the Lions. And that's what you have to do to beat a lion in the jungle. You're not going to really win that matchup. But if you do, it's getting on top of them and attacking. And they were like the hyenas in the jungle today as they got on top of the Lions and stayed on them. What's your take on the Buffalo Bills? And are you concerned about the Lions, even though that's their first loss in 11 weeks after 11 straight wins?
Right.
They lose. But they got the Eagles to worry about with their number 1 seed. So 2 questions, I guess, I'm asking. Are you concerned about the Lions losing this game and how they lost it? And do you think it's very important for them to get that number 1 seed, in the postseason? Do they need it more than others, more than Philly? And then Buffalo. Are they the best in the AFC? Possibly the NFL. Because if you ask me, Terrence, the 2 hottest teams right now are the Eagles and the Bills. And I'm not saying those 2 will be in the Super Bowl, but they look like the best right now, realistically. And I'm just speaking hypothetical because we all know how I feel about this game. But those are my questions for you, T. Excuse me.
I was like, what's going on? Hey, man, as far as the Lions, I don't have any concern about them as far as their ability to win games going forward. I do think they'll still get that number 1 seed. But the only problem is Minnesota is right behind them. So not only are they at a chance to lose the number 1 seed, they're at a chance to not even win the division. They might be on the road in the playoffs. So that's a scary scenario to be, 12? Are they 12-2? 11-2?
They're 12-2, Detroit, yes.
12-2. You 12-2, and there's still a chance that you have to go on the road in the playoffs. Like, they're not going to have the division wrapped up until probably the last week of the season, just because of how good Minnesota is. Well, on the flip side, you look at Kansas City, very similar record. The division is wrapped up. The number 1 seed is almost wrapped up. They could wrap that up maybe next week or so, depending on Mahomes' health. But Detroit Lions are still going to be in a dogfight to the end of the year, just based on how good Minnesota is. That's my only concern. I don't have any concern about them, winning or losing, but it's just a scary scenario. You're a slip and fall away from having to go on the road in the playoffs. So it's a situation where if they don't get the number 1 seed, they're going to be on the road. They're not going to win the division, I'm sure. Minnesota is just so close behind them. As far as the Bills, you know what? And I think I said this earlier. I want to apologize to Josh Allen. I thought he was going to have a terrible year because of Stephon Diggs being gone, because of I keep forgetting the other brother that was over there that's in Jacksonville now. He's gone. Thank you, Davis. Gabe Davis, yeah. But you know what? They seem to be even better without those guys. I know this is the regular season, and the Bills are sort of like my Ravens. What they do in the playoffs is what matters. They've been dominant, good teams in the regular seasons for several years now. My only concern is what they do in the playoffs, and that's the only jury that can have anything to say about the Bills is what goes on in January, and who knows, maybe even February. But as far as right now, I won't say they're the best team in the NFC or in the AFC simply because my Ravens did beat them head up, and Kansas City Chiefs are still the number 1 seed right now. So I know Mahomes is banged up, but I'm going to give that nod to Kansas City because you still got to beat those guys. And honestly, even if somebody had a better record than them, I would still say you still got to go through Kansas City in the playoffs for me to crown anybody else in the AFC.
Okay. Well, and that may be very well true, but it looks like if the Bills keep doing what they're doing, there's no guarantee that the Chiefs don't slip up here and lose a game or 2 depending on Mahomes' injury, and the KC may have to go into Buffalo.
Right.
They weren't successful doing that earlier this year, but we'll see how it goes. I think Buffalo is playing like the best team in the AFC right now. Not saying they'll represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, but they definitely do look like the best in the AFC. I can't say they're the best in the NFL because their defense is still suspect, and they're going to have to tighten up because in the postseason, you're not going to be able to give up 40 points and still come away with a win unless you score 40, 50. And I don't know how they'll
Right.
I don't know if them scoring that much points offensively will be sustainable. So the Eagles are the only reason, though, why I'm not saying that they're not the best. Their lack of defense, or the points that they're allowing, and that the Eagles are putting up points and they're playing good defense. And I mean, it's getting better by the week. I said Vic Fangio will probably struggle. Sometimes he does. He wasn't too successful in Miami. He's doing a great job, and he's got the right personnel, I believe, too. That's always been a factor, depending on how good Vic Fangio will be as a DC. Okay, so anyway, the Detroit Lions, a lot of people think that they need the home field advantage just because of them being the Detroit Lions. They don't play a lot of outside games, inclement weather, especially at home. They don't have to deal with it. Jared Goff, people don't seem to think that he's a quarterback, a California kid that can play outside in inclement weather when the postseason gets here. Last year they only had to play one game on the road, and that was in Santa Clara. So we'll see. But that number one seed, like you said, Terrence, is not promised because the Eagles are right there on their ass now, and the Vikings are just a game behind too. And they play tomorrow night or Monday Night Football as they host the Chicago Bears, a team that has lost 7 straight. Most people would say that the Vikings are going to be in that 12-2 bunch as well. This reminds me of the 1998 season, Terrence, now that I think about it. And I don't know if you can remember the 98 season as well as I do. I know I got you by a few years here. But 98 was the year that the Minnesota Vikings were like 15-1. This is like one of the greatest teams to never... Yeah, one of the greatest. Randy Moss's rookie season, one of the greatest teams to never win a Super Bowl. It's the Minnesota Vikings in 98, 15-1. Then you had the Atlanta Falcons, 14-2. My Niners were 13-3 or 12-4, I believe, and still had to go to Atlanta, and that's how they got eliminated. And then Atlanta being 14-2, still had to go to Minnesota in the championship game. Now they won it, but the NFC was pretty deep as far as the records, the seedings, great records. And that's what I'm seeing right now with these Vikings, Lions, and Eagles. And the Packers still not far behind if they can pull off this win here tonight in Seattle. We'll get to that a little later. We wanted to talk about those big games because we thought that the Lions and Bills was going to be interesting, but it kind of was a dominating game by Buffalo. And then the Steelers and Eagles, another game of the week that wasn't that competitive either or that close if we want to be real. The Eagles pretty much dominated that game. They were in control. Okay, so that says a lot about, again, Buffalo and Philly, possible Super Bowl matchup preview.